Hi, my name is Heather Rodriguez. I'm a natural fertility specialist, and my team and I help couples who are preparing for conception. Good morning, Christina. Good morning. Hello, hello. So nice to see you guys. So my team and I help couples who are preparing for conception. We help couples to overcome fertility issues and imbalances, as well as prepare for medical fertility treatments. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's see if I can adjust this light. Alrighty, so today's going to be Q&A Friday. I have a couple questions that I wanted to cover that we've gotten that I found so interesting. And then if you guys have questions, I'm more than happy to help you guys out and stay on and answer them. Okay, so the first question, I'm just going to read it because it's kind of long. Hi, I'm vegan and I eat 80% raw. I'm wanting to prepare for pregnancy. What are the most important tips for a vegan, raw foodist? And I'm going to throw in there vegetarian. When doing the fertility diet, what's the difference between the fertility diet and a vegan or raw diet? So we actually get this question a lot. We get questions from vegans, we get questions from vegetarians on how is the fertility diet different than the way they're eating, and do they need to make any adjustments because of those dietary preferences that they have. So the fertility diet is very different from a vegan and raw diet. When we're preparing for conception, the focus is more on building up the system and adding nutrients to the system and helping to build up nutrient stores. When you're on a raw or vegan diet, there's a lot that's being taken away. And I'm not saying you can't do those things and get pregnant, but I'm just explaining the difference and why the fertility diet is designed the way it is. This is a time in preconception to build up and to support. When you're doing a raw diet, that can be a very cleansing diet. It's pulling a lot away from the system because there's so many food groups you can't eat. As well with a vegan diet. A vegetarian diet is much easier because there's so much. You can still do eggs, you can still do cheeses and things like that. So it's very, very easy. But when you're doing a raw or vegan diet, you're going to have to make sure that you're getting specific sources of nutrients, such as folic acid. Folic acid is actually going to be fairly easy for a vegan because it's coming from dark leafy green vegetables. Some of the nutrients that I'd be a little bit more concerned about is going to be iron. And yes, vegetables definitely have iron, but you want to make sure that you're combining them with other foods to help with absorption. So in the case of non-heme iron sources, like vegetable iron sources, you're going to want to eat that with vitamin C. And this was a class I did a couple days ago on how to optimize the nutrients from the food you're eating. And it's up on YouTube. You can go to YouTube. I think it's youtube.com/Heather. And you can hear about more of those nutrients that are going to help with absorption. So that's something to think about. You also definitely are going to need B12 and to make sure you're getting enough of those nutrients for absorption. And then protein is very important as well. I know you can get protein from vegetarian sources. I'm totally clear on that. But that's going to be very important as well for helping to build a healthy uterine lining, healthy baby. So it's not that it can't be done. It's just that the general fertility diet that we help people with and that we promote is going to include animal products in it for very good and specific reasons because they're so nutrient dense. Totally understand. For the vegan and the vegetarians, I totally get it. I've been on every single type of path during my life. I've been vegetarian, I've been vegan, I was a raw foodist for a year. I totally get all those paths. But for preconception care and pregnancy, I think that these are going to be the times that you would want to eat as nutrient dense as possible and make it all about your baby and your pregnancy and helping to build up your nutrient stores, because that baby is going to suck the nutrient stores right out of you. So you want to make sure that you're helping to support as much as you can. So I'm going to move on to the next question. And we get a lot of these types of questions where they're multi-layered. And I will totally get to that in just a second. We can talk about uterine lining. Well, before I get to the next question, I'll do that, Patty. Oh, is it going in and out again? Is it going in and out for everybody? Oh, this makes me so sad. You're good? No? Yes? Okay, I'm just going to continue and we'll see what happens. Yours is fine. Okay, because sometimes it's one person and sometimes it's me. So that's why. Okay, great. So uterine lining. There are different ways. Do you guys want me to first talk about uterine lining, or do you want me to go ahead and talk about multi-layered fertility issues? Uterine lining, multi-layered issues. Which one? Uterine lining first? Uterine lining? Okay, cool. Awesome. All right. This seems like a really important topic to you guys. I'm glad I asked. Okay, so uterine lining. you know, this is something that I think a lot of people don't think about because it's such kind of a sideline thing. We're always thinking about how can I ovulate? How can I make sure my cycle's long enough? How can I get pregnant in general? But a lot of people kind of don't think about uterine lining until they're maybe doing a medicated cycle where it's very focused on uterine lining, like you're taking medication specifically to grow uterine lining. So the way to do that naturally, some of the things to focus on and to look into is there's a couple different things. Uterine lining is the first half of your cycles when the uterine lining is beginning to grow, thicken, develop, and that's done by estrogen in the system. That's one of the things estrogen does, is it causes things to grow in the body, both good and sometimes we don't want those things there. So your uterine lining is growing throughout the first half of your cycle and continuing, preparing for the embryo to come and implant. So some of the things that are going to be essential for uterine lining health is going to be healthy circulation to the reproductive system. And this is something that's totally free. Doing exercise. A lot of us are sitting. I sit at my computer. I'm sitting here right now when I'm talking to you. I drive a lot. Things like that is a lot of sitting. So to increase the uterine lining, you're going to want to increase circulation to the reproductive system. You can do this through yoga, through exercise, through self-fertility massage, or having someone else do fertility massage for you, like Mayan abdominal massage therapy. You can use gentle essential oils in your lower abdomen. Castor oil packs are another great way to increase circulation. And drinking plenty of water. So that's going to be one of the first things, because the more blood flow and the more healthy nutrients that are going to the uterus and reproductive system, the healthier the lining is going to be. The next thing for uterine lining is going to make sure that you have healthy progesterone levels, because once your uterine lining is growing, you ovulate, and then after that, progesterone maintains the uterine lining. It prevents it from breaking down. So if you have low progesterone, that uterine lining may start to break down earlier than it should. So implantation is, you know, being affected. And also you need the second half of your cycle to be long enough for the embryo to implant in that uterine lining. Another component is going to be protein. I talked about this a little earlier. Protein is an essential nutrient for building uterine lining. I've noticed a difference in people who are not, is it okay to use a heating pad for castor oil? Yes. If I have scattered, when do I start progesterone here? I'll answer that in just 1 second. So with the uterine lining, I've noticed people who have low protein diets can have a deficient uterine lining. They've got very, very light cycles. They might just have spotting. And once they shift to a higher protein diet, the uterine lining improves and the period quality, blood quality, and everything improves. This can be vegetarian sources of protein, or this can be animal sources of protein. But that's something else to consider. And then the last element is there are herbs that you can use to help to support healthy uterine lining. There's two different things. One is called Uterocalm. Uterocalm is a combination of herbs that help to keep the uterus calm for implantation. And then another herb is going to be red raspberry leaf. Red raspberry leaf is very nourishing to the uterus, and it helps to tonify and strengthen the uterus. So that's something else that can be done to help strengthen the uterine lining. So I hope that was helpful for uterine lining. Everybody, no matter if you're going medical, natural, whatever it is, everybody wants a healthy uterine lining. And I think diet is one of the biggest impacts on that, as well as making sure your hormones are balanced. If you're deficient, like someone just asked, if you're deficient in estrogen or deficient in progesterone, it's going to affect that. So a lot of people ask about electric heating pad with castor oil packs. And to be a purist, yes, you just want to do a hot water bottle, but frankly, with the frequency that you're going to need to do them 3 times a week, I find the electric pad, I actually like it better because it plugs in, you can adjust the heat, it warms up a lot quicker, it's consistent. With the hot water bottle, I find that it cools down very quickly, and it works great. So if you're anti electric mat, that's fine, do the hot water bottle. But for convenience factor, because you're already going to do that and you'll probably follow up with self-fertility massage, it's like just do the heating pack. I think there's kind of bigger worries. You know, is there a time not to drink red raspberry tea during cycle? So there's kind of a thing out there about red raspberry leaf, whether it's safe, post-ovulation, how you should use it. You know, for years, it's just been used all month long. It's been used through pregnancy. But the one caution I would give is if you're someone who has had miscarriages before, or you have recurrent miscarriages, I would not use red raspberry leaf until later on, actually in the pregnancy, until the 2nd trimester. I would use something more like Uterocalm. So, you know, I personally haven't seen that effect of red raspberry leaf, but it's always better to be on the side of caution, and you can just replace it with Utericalm. To wean off Vitex, do you slowly lower the dose until you're not taking more? Yes. And we have a whole article on naturalfertilityinfo.com about how to, maybe it's my jacket, about how to wean yourself off of Vitex and how to kind of just lower your dosage once you're ready to do that. Okay. Is that better? I'm just having some technical difficulties today. Okay, great. Insulin resistance and maintaining thyroid under 2, best way to deal with. Well, the first is obviously thyroid is one thing that working with a practitioner in whatever form of medication you guys decide on is going to be important. It's so essential to have your thyroid levels right at the right level under 2, and I'm glad you know what the levels are supposed to be, and the practitioner you're working with, I hope, does, and they're not at the old levels of 4 being normal, especially for fertility. That makes a huge difference because, as we know, when the thyroid levels, or if you have hyperthyroidism, you probably know if the levels are off, if your thyroid levels are off, it can increase the chances of having a miscarriage. So that's important. Insulin resistance and thyroid, I'm not sure if I would see a huge connection between the two right away. Insulin resistance is going to be so diet-based. You're going to focus on diet, whereas with thyroid, diet isn't going to have as much of an effect on it. That's something that in preparation and for pregnancy, you would need to supplement with some type of thyroid hormone, whether that's Synthroid or glandular therapy, whatever it is you work with your practitioner on. Whereas insulin resistance is going to be diet focused and eating low glycemic, low sugar, lots of protein, fiber in the diet to help slow down the blood sugar levels. What about yoga? I don't know what's your question about yoga. What part of cycle to do castor oil pack? If you're actively trying to conceive, do it the first part of your cycle and discontinue it after ovulation until pregnancy or period. Do you have a Q&A every Friday? You know, I try to do a Q&A every Friday. I actually do a Q&A after every single scope. I stay on and answer any questions. But on Fridays, I kind of gather some questions that I find really interesting and I think you guys will find interesting. And I do that on Friday. But I'm not, as you can ask everybody, there's a couple on here, like I know Tiffany's been on since the very beginning, but know that I'm kind of spontaneous. I have to be. I have to like speak from my heart, so I have to just be spontaneous that day. You go for thyroid levels. You want to avoid thyroid hormones. I'm not the person to ask because I'm not a yoga expert, but I'd be really interested in finding that out. When it comes, and I'll talk about blocked fallopian tubes in a second. When it comes to fertility and pregnancy, I'm a lot more protective than I would be for something that just pertains to me. Like when someone else's life is coming into the picture, because I found out I have hypothyroidism, and at first I was really against and really sketched out about doing the medication because I'm like, oh, you know, taking this medication, but thyroid hormone happens to be one of the mildest of all, and the side effects are pretty rare, especially when you're working with someone who knows what they're doing and knows about the proper, more up-to-date levels, etc. And there's other things you can do that are more natural-based, like glandular therapy, but it's so needed for pregnancy to be sustained. You have to have those levels because your baby is dependent on your thyroid for its thyroid hormones. So it's you know, really, really important. Okay, someone was asking when I'm going to talk about blocked fallopian tubes. I will have to do a whole scope on that, and I will do that very soon. I know you've been asking for that for a while, so I'll go ahead and do that this next week. If you have scattered periods, when do you begin to apply progesterone cream? So if you, oh, that's a good question about endo. That's the next one I'm going to cover. Oh gosh, I'm such a squirrel. What was that question? Before the endo and the meat in the egg, or I'm sorry, the endo meat and milk. Castor oil, that was such a good question. It's like gone. Oh, okay. Thank you. Thanks for posting that again. If you have scattered periods, when do you begin to apply pressure? Okay, so if you for sure know that, say you're just spotting, I know, right, squirrel. Say you're just spotting and you don't have a real period. You know what I mean? Like there's not at least 3 days of actual bleeding. You're just spotting, and then you're spotting middle of your cycle, and so you're not really having a period. Spotting and a period are two different things. Then you're going to just pick a cycle and you're going to mimic it. So you'd pick, okay, I'm going to choose this day as day 1 of my cycle. I'm going to choose this day as day 12 ovulation or 14. And then after that, I would use the progesterone cream, because then you're going to help your body to reset and kind of have a cycle of its own. But you want to make sure that that you either are or not pregnant when you discontinue use. So you have to be careful with that. So you're going to, that's probably about 12 days, 14 days after your ovulation date. You want to make sure that you know if you're pregnant or not when you discontinue it. So, because without a period, that's usually the sign for most people. So you're going to have to make sure of that and be a little patient, because it's going to take a couple cycles maybe for that period to get back. And look at the other reasons you may not be having a full period. I would kind of look at that, now that I think about it, I would look at that more so before I start actually adding the progesterone cream. I would look at how can I have my cycle normalized. And because that's kind of like the layer before progesterone, like that it's spotty, you don't have regular period. That would be my bigger concern than the progesterone. And that's what I would do secondary and look at, why aren't you getting your period? Someone was asking about, what was that other thing? I want to do a whole scope on that. Is it okay to have organic meat and grass-fed dairy for endometriosis? Okay, so I'm going to answer that one. Is it okay to have organic meat and grass-fed dairy for endometriosis? So this is something that's really interesting. There's actually a couple studies for this. So in that question, I'm going to answer this bigger question, and within that will be your answer. So this is the question. This is the second question I have for today. Someone wrote in, and we get a lot of these multi-layered questions. I have endometriosis, uterine fibroids, and blocked fallopian tubes. Right? You want to give her a hug, right? I've heard that there are many foods that may be causing these health problems for me. Is this true, and what can I do? If it's true, how do I change my diet towards a fertility diet? Please help. So it's interesting, because we do get a lot of people who contact us that have multi-layered issues. I'm not ovulating. I don't get my period. I have fibroid. There's like these layers of issues. And so it's really interesting. And I love that she asked about the connection with diet, because while it's not going to be the cure-all or necessarily the overall cause, it can have a really big impact on those specific imbalances. Endometriosis, uterine fibroids, blocked fallopian tubes. Diet and blocked fallopian tubes, not so much. We'll just kind of take that off the table. There's other things, which I will cover in a future scope. But uterine fibroids and endometriosis, those are imbalances that are considered like stagnant. There's tissues and things growing that should not be there. They're an estrogen dominant situation, because things are growing. Estrogen makes things grow. And it's also certain foods. So how diet can affect those two is that certain foods can cause trigger an autoimmune response in the body. So endometriosis is sometimes considered to be an autoimmune imbalance, autoimmune issue within the body. So when there's some things that can be linked to that, to causing a autoimmune response within the body. So you want to look at what key foods trigger that. So this is one you guys all know, wheat. I mean, wheat is like, wheat is kind of getting run out of town currently. It's kind of the current, everyone's, wheat intolerant or gluten intolerant, and people are feeling so different coming off of wheat. I think because they're coming off of another processed food, if they're eating white processed food, so you're going to naturally feel better. But you can replace that with like quinoa, millet, the things that are seeds, but that feel like you're eating grains, like they're heavier. So quinoa, millet, amaranth, oats. And oats are naturally gluten-free. It just depends on where they're manufactured. That's where it comes in, because you see these gluten-free oats. Oats do not have gluten in them, but they a lot of times are manufactured in a place where there is wheat being processed. So another thing is dairy, so especially non-organic dairy. So dairy can be very congesting. So you already have a stagnant condition going on, and dairy is naturally congesting. If you have to do dairy, then obviously grass-fed is going to be the best thing. What can wheat bread be replaced with? Ezekiel, I think, is a good middle ground. Ezekiel bread is sprouted wheat. There's sprouted breads out there. There's actually some good rice breads coming out. There's some alternatives to that, but I personally have just gotten off of bread. Like, it just naturally happened. I really don't like bread all that much, but I do like Ezekiel English muffins. It's a good replacement. I don't see as much of a reaction with that. So that's something to look into, but there's so many alternatives. Like right now, people with food, because so many people have reactions to food, there's so many options for people. Yeah, Ezekiel 4:9, yummy. And my kiddo loves it too. Yeah, buckwheat. My husband is addicted to buckwheat. I cannot believe how much buckwheat, like everything we eat is like buckwheat. We make buckwheat muffins, or he's really addicted to cookies, buckwheat cookies. He eats buckwheat cereal. It's all good. And then also, so another thing, so dairy. And there's a lot of replacements for dairy. They're not going to be, I do have to say that dairy replacements are not one for one. Milk is nutrient dense. There's so much greatness in it, but it causes mucus, it causes stagnation. Almond milk, while I love almond milk, or hemp milk, while I love it, is not as nutrient dense. Because if you ever look at the nutritional profile, it's not as high in protein because it's the water of, you blending it with that. So I'd rather put the hemp seeds into my smoothie or whatever it is to get the nutrients. Just saying. Another thing is soy. Soy for some people is going to be immune triggering. As well as some non-organic foods, especially for endometriosis. There's been some studies connected to red meat consumption and pork consumption to actually increasing the pain or exacerbating a lot of the symptoms that someone has with endometriosis. So if you're having a lot of pain because you have endometriosis, try cutting out your meat and like considering doing just 1 serving a week, or just lowering it by 1 serving each week and seeing how it makes you feel. You're going to have to test with the organic dairy for endometriosis. You're going to have to test it. And the thing with endo for most people is you feel it. Like it's something you feel. It's undeniable. This is going on for me. This is how I feel. So when you make these changes, you should be able to see a difference right away. So try it out. Try cutting dairy out and see how it makes you feel. If I was having severe endometriosis pain, I would cut out red meats and I would cut out dairy. And I would see how I'd feel, because you adjust pretty quickly. Yogurt is going to be dairy. It's more easily digestible by most people, but if you're going through something like this that is definitely a big issue keeping you from getting pregnant, cutting out dairy for this time period. It's not for the rest of your life. Cutting out the red meat during this time period. Not everyone has to do that. You have an 80-20 diet because your husband's a vegetarian. That's a lot of how I eat. I eat very, very vegetarian, and then I have some meat. So I hope that answered your question. So some things that are supportive, so we just talked about what you can take away, right? So I'm going to now share with you some things that you can add that are going to be helpful, because I want to leave you on proactive note. Again, it's going to be flooding your body with living food, green leafy vegetables, fruits, nuts and seeds. Essential fatty acids are actually very helpful for painful situations. Foods high in fiber, the seeds, nuts and seeds are very good for fertility. Beans, all these things look like ovaries, right? And they're all the beginning of life for all these plants. So those are naturally going to be healthy fertility foods. The seed, a bean, is basically going to grow into a plant. It's a seed of a bean plant, or of a legume plant. Seeds like amaranth, quinoa, those are seeds. Nuts. Those are all going to grow into a plant, so those are naturally really nutrient dense and fertility nutrient foods. It's kind of funny. So anyways, all right, so that's it for that. I hope I got you started in the right direction for that. So I'll pause for a second if you guys have any other questions for yourselves before I go on to my third one. And thank you for the hearts. So I think today it's going to happen. We're almost at 500 in our little Periscope family here. Seeming that, I think this is going to be my 65th scope or something like that. Supplements for fibroids. So that's a big topic. It's hard for me to just dish them out like that, because there's some foundational things that need to be in place. And yes, it'd be easier for me to say, just go to the shop and buy this. But I want to make sure that you get the results you need. So there's some lifestyle changes that would have to happen with fibroid. It's a topic that I can cover in a scope, but if you obviously probably want some information today, go to naturalfertilityinfo.com and type in fibroids, and you're going to look at the whole diet. So something I can leave you with today, since you said such as, is the first thing to look at is decreasing excess estrogens from your life and from your diet. That's going to be trying to moving towards an organic diet. Eating more fiber helps to reduce excess estrogens. Cleansing the body and supporting the liver through something like fertility cleansing. That would be step one, transitioning to a fertility diet. That's kind of like the basis and laying the foundation that's going to need to be in place, and then you can add the herbs. So that's where I would suggest to start. Oh, what was that last question? Someone was asking about castor oil pack, cycle day 5. That would be fine. Ovulation is generally, excuse me, ovulation is generally day 12, 14, or later. So cycle day 5 is fine for a castor oil pack. Good. I'm glad you found that helpful. I know it'd be so much easier if I was like, here, do A, B, C, D, but there's lifestyle changes that are involved as well. Yeah, that's my third one is egg donor. Good, good. Yeah, you know, there's not just one magical pill or one step. And one of the gifts that can come from a fertility journey is the knowledge and education empowerment you get through it, because you've gone through this, and because let me see if I can get this to be brighter. Because you've gone through it, you're going to have the healthiest pregnancy. You're going to be prepared to have such a healthy child because of all this stuff you've learned. So yeah, fertility journey can be totally challenging and hard, but when you're on the other side, you will be on the other side, you will then see, wow, there's so much that I've gotten from this, besides my baby. Okay, so on to the third question. Egg donor. So we work with a lot of people who are preparing for medical fertility treatments, whether it's IUI, IVF, egg donor, embryo donation, all kinds of situations. I'm not the type of person who is like, you have to only go natural, that's the only way. No way. Everybody is in a different place, and everybody is going to need different situations. I think there are definitely a lot of people who automatically go to medical fertility treatments who may not need them, who should maybe take a couple steps beforehand to see when they're ovulating and kind of learn more about their body. But it is a miracle. It's something that we're so privileged to have access to if it's needed. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. Okay, so here's the question that we received, and I thought this was a really good one. Hi, I'm preparing for an egg donor cycle in March. Are there any specific supplements or other preparations you would recommend which focus particularly on preparing the uterus rather than the egg? And ask me that question right after. I'll get right to that one. That's a really good question. And then this is so interesting because when either you might be doing an egg transfer because this is your second IVF, so you have frozen eggs that are, from the previous retrieval, or if you're working with donor eggs. We've got a lot of mamas who went donor egg, later 40s, and they were able to go on and have their children. So this is some tips I have for preparing for that. Since you're not using your own eggs, there's a couple different things. The first is obviously going to be exercise because it's going to increase circulation. That's the main reason I say that. So anything that increases circulation to the reproductive system is going to be good because we're focusing again on uterine lining like we talked about before. So you also want to strengthen the muscles and everything around the uterus because chances of you being pregnant this next cycle, you kind of want to be like, yes, this is happening. I'm going to be pregnant, so I want to be ready for healthy pregnancy. This is an instance where I would be looking into red raspberry leaf unless you've had prior miscarriages. It's just a really nutrient-dense herb that's very tonifying to the uterus, very specific for the uterus, and it's a really, really great herb. But if you've had recurrent miscarriages, then just do this next combination of herbs I'm going to talk about. The amount of exercise recommended a day, I'd say at least 30 minutes. So that can be a combination of walking, doing yoga, running, swimming, whatever it is that interests you. I personally love lifting weights. Yeah, I love lifting weights. So find what works for you and do that. The next thing for preparing for an egg transfer type of treatment, if it's donor egg or your own, is going to be using a formula that I created called Uterocalm. This is going to be a combination of 4 herbs that help to relax and support the uterus. So Uterocalm is best if used weeks prior to help prepare the uterus, and with your doctor's consent during transfer and then into your first trimester. So, give me just 1 second. So the herbs in that are going to be cramp bark. Cramp bark is very calming and it helps to relax the uterus. It's also very calming to the nervous system, as is partridge berry. That is another herb that is in the blend. Black haw, oat straw. These are all very calming herbs to both specifically to the uterus while helping to strengthen a weakened uterus. So we're just helping to strengthen the environment, prepare for that transfer to happen. And this is important for anyone. I mean, there's anyone who is having an egg or an embryo arriving, to the scene, we want to welcome that beautiful guest. I'm sorry, I'm such a dork today. Okay, and then L-arginine. L-arginine is a supplement that you don't want to use if you have herpes, because it could cause a flare-up. But if you do not, it's a fantastic herb for increasing circulation to the uterus. It increases nitric oxide in the system, which makes the capillaries dilate and makes your circulation increase. So that's something to possibly look into. And it does help with blood dilation, specifically to the uterus, ovaries, and genitals. Helping to promote a healthy environment for implantation. The next thing is going to be self-fertility massage and castor oil therapy. So these are one of the easiest ways to increase circulation to the reproductive system, because you're directly massaging those areas. Self-fertility massage is done externally, just so you know, it's done on the lower abdomen. It's something you do for yourself. I created it so that you could do massage at least 3 times a week, because that's what you need for the results. That gets very expensive when you're seeing a practitioner. But if you have a practitioner near you, work them into that, or see them as much as you can afford. That would be fantastic, wouldn't it? And then castor oil packs. So ideally, how I suggest to do it is you'd start with a castor oil pack. You'd have that on for 20 to 30 minutes, and then you would do self-fertility massage. If you want to take it up a level, you can add essential oils to that. You can use Radiant Womb, that's my fertility massage oil blend. Or you can just use lavender or geranium or something that you like that's very relaxing. So those would be my tips to prepare. Of course, you need the foundation of preconception health, like anyone who is preparing for conception, of a whole food multivitamin, eating a fertility diet, fertility smoothies, those types of things, essential fatty acid. Having those things in place is just a kind of a given, but those are specific for preparing. Should you do fertility massage before going to sleep or day? You can do it whatever time you can do it. It's really relaxing, so you can do it while you're watching TV at night. It's not going to like wake you up or anything. Whatever. It's like whatever makes you comply more is going to be the most effective. Can you use red raspberry leaf while trying to conceive? You can, as long as you're not someone who's had recurrent miscarriages or has an agitated uterus, or have had issues like that. I think it would be fine. For someone who has had recurrent miscarriages, you want to look more in a uterocalm or a little bit calming set of uterine tonic herbs. Thoughts on womb massage for healing scar tissue? Oh my God, yes. Yeah, that's part of, someone is asking about blocked fallopian tubes. That's part of the protocol. That's part of how you would support proper circulation to wherever, in this case to the reproductive system, is helping the body to get rid of scar tissue. Massage isn't going to do it alone, but it does help to break up adhesions. It does help to stimulate the process. Can you use milk thistle while trying to conceive? Yes, that's in the fertility cleanse kit. Milk thistle's fine. It's a gentle liver supporting herb. Yeah, it's fine. I love milk thistle. I'm actually going to be starting a fertility cleanse. I'm not trying to get pregnant right now, but my next cycle, I'm going to be doing a fertility cleanse for overall reproductive health. Almond health. Yeah, milk thistle can be taken regularly. Yep. It can be taken every single day. It's a wonderful herb. I love milk thistle. All right, if you guys have any other questions, those are the ones that I brought for today that I thought were really interesting. Dandelion tea is great too, very nutrient dense. The root is going to be more specific for the liver, whereas the leaf is a little bit more kind of a nutrient herb, or it's a little bit more for bladder, for tonifying. So it just depends on kind of what your goal is on what you would use it for. Oh my God, Christina, I'm excited for you. I want to, please tell us once you get it and you've done it. I want to hear your feedback. I want to hear your feedback. Yay! I'm excited for you. Way to do something for yourself. Oh, good, good. I'm glad that you found it helpful. Good. So last week, I think it was last week, we talked about fertility yoga, and I had gone through every single type of fertility yoga DVD, all the things that were offered out there, and how our team and I found this specific program. Yeah, so you can, if you're interested in that one, you can get it at the Natural Fertility Shop. And it's 2 CDs. It's broken into 4 parts for each different part of your cycle. It's called Restoring Fertility, Yoga for Optimal Fertility. Yeah, I'll show you next time. Well, here, I can show you it on the website. That's easy enough. It's out, it's gone. All right, here. Ready? This is what it looks like. Can stress affect ovulation? Oh my God, it can, definitely. All right, yeah, so there it is, restoring fertility, yoga for optimal fertility. And there's two, you can see like the two, I'll make this bigger, 2 CDs. So that's what it looks like. Yeah. Yeah, stress and fertility is I think one of those topics that, just like uterine lining, kind of go missed, and they're so important for a wide variety of people. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's awesome to hang out with you. I believe today's Friday. I might, if we're doing something fun this weekend, I'll scope and just do a laid back whatever our family's up to. But I will see you again next week. Have a great day.